koji smo objavili pre godinu i po dana, Tirza, izazvao ogromnu pažnju i prodati u više od 4000 primjeraka do sada, ali tiraž je jedna stvar, druga stvar je to što je ta knjiga izazvala ozbiljne polemike i zapravo ono što čini mi se savremena književnost i treba da radi, isprovocirala je ljude da razgovaraju, da se sukobljavaju, da se ne slažu, ali ono što je najvažnije da komuniciraju i da uvažavaju jedni druge. Ovih dana smo objavili još jednu njegovu knjigu koja se zove Azilant, koja je napisana pre 20 godina, međutim, već po samom nazivu možete zaključiti da je prilično aktualna, ali ne samo zbog toga, već i zbog mnogo nekih drugih stvari koje ćete naći u njoj. Nastavak razgovora će biti na engleskom. Ja vas pozivam naravno da kad god imate želju da se uključite, da nešto pitate, nadam se Arnona, ne mene, slobodno podignite ruku, nemojte da čekate kraj. Obično kad kažemo na kraju ima li neko pitanje, niko nema nijedno pitanje. Ja vas molim da imate pitanja, to čini svaki razgovor interesantniji. Nemojte se ljutiti, nepristojno izgleda što držim telefon, ali prosto tu sam sam sebi poslao pitanja, tako da ću čitati odatle. Okay, let's start this conversation. Arnon, welcome to Belgrade.
Thank you.
It's not your first time in Belgrade, actually. You mentioned that you were here 20 years ago.
I was here 20 years ago in 2004 in the winter.
Why?
Yes. I wanted to see, well, I started doing my bigger journalistic pieces in 2006. Then I went with the Dutch army to Afghanistan for 10 days. But still, I mean, everything that happened in Yugoslavia was, especially in the Netherlands, but also in the US, so important. So I thought it's important. I wanted to go there and to see the city with my own eyes.
And how it looks today comparing to 2004?
Well, I just told you, I mean, the old city is still the same, but of course there are parts like the waterfront, the parts of the city that are completely new, that didn't exist at that time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start.
It's interesting. On my way to the Vladimir told me that back then everything that happened in the 90s was farther away than it's now.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes the past comes closer, even though it's if you just count the years, it's farther away.
Okay. Sometimes I think we live our past all the time. Well, let's start a conversation about starting with actually your background story, your family. I read somewhere that your mother survived the Auschwitz, so it's a like episode in her life that really determines her a lot. But also, I wanted to ask you about your experience growing up as a child of Jewish German immigrants. So your parents actually emigrated from Germany, and your childhood and your youth, you were a troublemaker. I read that you were kicked off the school and you started your own business with 20, which was really not so successful, but nevertheless. So let us know something about this part of the story.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I was a troublemaker. I left high school, left the gymnasium when I was 15, 16, because at that time I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to go to the theater and I wanted to live a different life than the life that my
artistic life.
Yeah. An artistic life. My parents expected me to become a scientist or maybe become a dentist or a lawyer, but that's those flavors, you know, and I wanted to do something else. And I thought I can only convince them that I'm quite serious about my other plans if I leave high school. And of course, this was a big, especially for my father, a big trauma. My parents were quite old. My father was 58 when I was born. My mother was already 44. When I was walking around with my father, people thought that he was my grandfather. And of course, I mean, even though they met after the war in the Netherlands, they were very German in many ways.
So what does it mean? What does it mean to being German?
Of course, they were Jewish, but German at the same time. So they felt that everything had been better in Germany. That the Netherlands was just like lower culture, and only the herring was good there, but everything else in German was better. But still, they didn't want and couldn't live there after the war anymore. So there was this schizophrenic situation that on the one hand, they lived in the Netherlands, they spoke Dutch to me, but also German. On the other hand, they were really outsiders for many reasons, because of their age, because of their background, and also in the Jewish community, they didn't feel at home. So I think they taught me how to be an outsider, and to me, an outsider is not something purely negative, quite the opposite. I think as an author, as a novelist, it's very helpful to see everything from. Also, when I go to parties, I like to stand against the wall and to see what's happening in the center instead of being the middle of the tension myself. So it was very helpful. And of course, the fact that I survived the war changed their lives and became important to them. But I really despise the way we nowadays use the word trauma so easily and so as if everybody is entitled to his or her own trauma. So I never felt that I had a traumatic youth. There's one anecdote my mother loved to tell. She's not alive anymore. But when I had problems sleeping when I was 3-4 years old, I have a son now that's the same age, and my parents decided to go to a child psychiatrist. And then he looked at me and he talked to me and he called my parents and he said, "The child is okay, let the parents come."
Okay. Your first novel was published in 1994 called Blue Mondays, am I right?
Yeah.
And then you, for this novel, you won the award for the best debutant of the year. And somehow you won the same award 6 years after.
Yes.
Because you wrote this award novel under your pseudonym, name, yes. Was it some kind of a scandal? Did they feel cheated?
They felt cheated, the people who gave away the prize, the award. But to me, it was very helpful. I mean, I started you mentioned before. I mean, I left high school. I wanted to be an actor. I failed as an actor. I started my own publishing house that didn't do commercially quite well, so I had to give it up. And then my first novel came out, Blue Mondays, and I was very happy, but I never thought that it would become also commercial success. And it sold, I think, 150,000 copies, and it was translated into many languages. And then I had the opportunity a few years later to write a novel under a pseudonym. So I came up with this it was a bit before email and the whole internet, now it's more difficult, but I came up with this idea of a philosophy student in Vienna. He's half Dutch, half Austrian, and he wrote a book that's supposedly autobiographical that was called The Story of My Boldness. And it was, as I mentioned the name Sigmund Freud before in the other panel. Freud was and is still quite important to me. This was about a philosophy student who had the smallest penis in the world. And then I find you are laughing, I find it quite funny myself. And his whole life he's obsessed by it. Anyhow, so this novel came out in the Netherlands, and the reviews were quite good. And then it won again the prize for the best first novel. But then there was an article in a Dutch newspaper that they did some research, and I found out that this Mark van der Jacht, his name was Mark van der Jacht, didn't exist. And then the people who gave away the award, who handed out the award, told my publisher that if Mark van der Jacht comes to get the award, he has to show his passport. So of course I could not send anybody else because there was no passport that existed. So officially I won the award, but I didn't get the money that was attached to it, and that was fine. Oh. To me, the honor was more important, and it was really a pleasure and liberating to write a novel under a different name and not to feel the expectations of the readers.
And then let's speak a little bit about Tirza, because I think Tirza was definitely the game changer. It's still the novel you are most famous about, and you won the biggest Dutch literary award for this. But I read somewhere that you won another award, which is I'm not sure I will say it right, but it's some kind of a Belgium literary award for the best Dutch novel. Are these Belgian people crazy? Why they have a award for a best Dutch novel? Well, imagine having an award for the best Croatian novel in Serbia.
Yeah, it's a bit the situation. It's a bit different from the situation in this part of the world. Of course, Belgium is divided in two parts. Yeah. You have Flanders and Wallonia, and in the northern part of Belgium, the people speak Flemish, and that's a kind of Dutch. I mean, written the language is exactly the same. So if they hand out a literary award, it's to all people, whether they are from Belgium or the Netherlands.
For the book.
For the book. So it's not that crazy. There's not. I mean, you can hear the accent is different.
It sounds funny. Yeah.
It sounds funny, but basically it's the same language. There's really no difference.
But how did you feel when they described Tirza as the most important novel of 21st century? It sounds terrifying.
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, in a way, but I felt also honored. It was like a Dutch weekly a few years ago who asked critics and other authors to name the most important novel written in this century so
But
far.
not only Dutch,
No, yeah.
from around the world. So
Yeah, no, I felt extremely honored, but it was not. And I think in order to keep on writing, in order to go on with the work, what I'm doing, it's also important to forget all the compliments, and in a way, that's the only way to continue. And also, I think it's helpful that maybe people in the audience have the same experiences. I remember insults much better than compliments.
Okay.
If somebody pays you a compliment, you tend to forget it, but an insult, 10 years later, you see the same person and say, "Oh, you said that to me." You will.
Yeah, I read somewhere that some critic accused you of not having a sense of humor.
That's
It was painful, I see.
that's a bit, yeah. I think of myself as somebody who has a sense of humor. Even yeah. But of course, there are different senses of humor, and some people don't share my humor, but I do, and I think also
I understand you perfectly.
on a more serious level. Even though Tirza and also the Asylum Seeker are quite serious, but I think without a sense of humor, without a sense of irony, you cannot write a novel. There's even in the most tragic novels that you can always find this irony that's so important to me when it comes to storytelling or to life.
What disturbs us so much, so deeply in Tirza? Because most from the people, mostly I hear when we speak about this novel that it's deeply frustrating and disturbing. Those who likes it don't, who dislike, but the same thing is disturbing. What do you find so disturbing in your own novel?
I'm not sure if I found it very disturbing. Of course, I mean I wrote it, but I think it has to do with.
You want to be disturbing.
I wanted to be as honest as possible about this father-daughter relationship, even though at that time I still don't have a daughter. But I think there was this other colleague of mine who said in another panel, literature is this fight against cliches. I would say it's also a fight against the social fabric that we put on reality. So of course we play our roles in daily life and we try to be as civilized as possible, and we manage to do that most of the time. But behind that, there's another life. And I think part of what I aim for as a novelist is to show that life. Yes, there's a beautiful quote by Garcia Marquez, which I love to quote. He said, everybody has a public life, a private life, and a secret life. And I think part of what you do as a novelist is also to show the secret lives of people. And I think that many people could relate to this character Hofmeister. And of course, he does things that are not very civilized all the time. So I think what's disturbing to some of the readers is that they had to accept maybe that there are things in their own lives, in themselves, that are hard to accept for them.
But the way you wrote this novel, it's also interesting because it's written in the third, but still we feel like we are in the head of the main protagonist.
Yes, that's yeah.
How did you decide to write this way?
I think it came the first time I tried to do that was with this novel, The Asylum Seeker, and then I didn't want to have like the first person narrative, but I wanted to give the reader the sensation, the feeling that there is this narrator telling the story, but in reality you're very close to the main character. And we spoke about disinformation, and of course in the panel before, and everybody's speaking about his or her own life. There's always a tad of disinformation. There are always blind spots. And to me, this novel was also about the confrontation between the blind spots of this main character and the other world around him that sees him in a very different way.
About this novel, Asylum Seeker, it's written 20 years ago, but it's frighteningly current, and this situation, not just due to the global immigration crisis, which is like bigger than ever, but also I think because it describes very well the disappearance of empathy. How do you view this novel now after 20 years? Because it's really current at this moment. Did you expect it to be 20 years after?
You hope, when you write a novel, you hope that it will survive at least as long as your own life. and maybe even longer. So yes, that was what I was hoping for. And in a way, of course, back then already migration was a big theme. By the way, it's the levels of migrants go up and down, but if you look really, there was a book published by a scientist not too long ago. They're quite steady. But we think, and it's part of a political problem, that they are enormously high. That's not the case. But what I felt attracted to, I mean, when I moved, I have to take a sip of water. It's not the emotions, it's just my voice. This idea that you, of course, that I saw it around me when I moved to New York in '95, that sometimes people get married for papers, not for love, but for papers. In the US, you can do it in order to get a green card. And it's very, yeah, sometimes people even pay money to others. If you get married to me, I get a green card, I pay you, and it's a deal. And then I heard about somebody who made a living out of it, who did it a few times, and so, and this was the original idea of the novel. But then I thought this is too cold, and I'm not interested in this cynicism. So I wanted to write a novel about a woman who's sick and who thinks maybe I can do something good for the world by getting married to an asylum seeker, and so helping this person getting a passport. But of course, he's still together with a man. So this, excuse me. The novel was also about this triangle of people. Mm-hmm. That's how it started.
Do you need more water? Please.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, yeah. They were quite close. Yeah, they became. Yeah. First, let me comment a bit on the fact that you said his main character is to you he's quite an awful man. To me, I kind of like him, and even though
you must defend him. Yeah,
I must defend him. I must defend, and in general in novels, I feel more, not only written by me, but I feel more attracted to people who seem to be awful, who are very different than to saints. I'm not so much. If I want to read about saints, I can go to the Bible. So, but to me, this sexless marriage, I discovered by talking to people, by doing readings, especially in Germany at that time, that about sex you can say anything. It was no taboo anymore. I mean, even pedophilia not, but anything was possible. And among the liberating people, anything goes. Okay, but there was one big taboo left. That was people being together without sex. And I thought people becoming brother and sister after a couple of years. And I thought this was to me a very interesting topic. And also because I felt that people really became uncomfortable when I wrote a short story that was like first a synopsis of this book. And then I read it and people really became uncomfortable. Like this was a bigger taboo to many people in the audience, the sexless life, than the sex. And it defines their being together. And even though it's sexless, of course, the jealousy doesn't disappear completely. So that attracted me at that time very much. Yeah, and still, I think it still is. I'm not sure if it's the taboo, but it does exist, and that people have to deal with it.
You know what they say: first husband and wife, then brother and sister, and then sister and sister. You know?
That's.
Well, let's speak about this main protagonist, main protagonists from these two novels we published. One is the Beck, and the other is the Hofmeister. And I found that they have a lot in common. They're trying to understand this rapidly changing world and to find their place, because this is not the world they were born like 40 or 50 years ago in. And they are distant, and they seek escape, but on the other hand, they are like frozen. They cannot move. And the most important thing for me is that actually that they are kind of men, they really do not understand women. And because they do not understand them, they are afraid of them. And I saw it in the both characters. So is this really some kind of picture, some kind of a photorobot of a modern 50-year-old man in the West or here, or they're just extreme?
No, I'm not. I would not want to call them extreme. And to me, also, of course, I see the differences are more important than the similarities. Hofmeester in Tirza is really a man who is also older than Beck in the Asylum Seeker, and he has this fear of losing his social standing. He's very much afraid of falling out of society. And whereas Beck is more somebody who he himself doesn't want to belong to the society. He used to be yes. He used to be a novelist himself, and then he decided to become a translator for text, for like how to do texts. So really like a very low job, but he's very happy with this, with also being invisible. Mm-hmm. And whether they understand women or not, I think it's more, of course, there's this big fear. There's the fear of the monster that Hofmeester feels is lurking inside him. That's the fear maybe of sexuality, of being overwhelmed by desires that you cannot control. I think that's much more important to them than the question whether they understand women in general. I would say what they have in common is that they don't completely understand themselves, that they're very alienated from who they are. And of course, there's one thing that still is intriguing to me, is the question in our society, in our changing society, and maybe in Serbia it's a bit different than, let's say, in the Netherlands, Belgium, or in the US. What does masculinity still mean? Does it mean anything? Or I should just point it out, is the goal to become, and also this is, by the way, Tao is saying, I once went to China for a television program, and I did a report on Taoism, and then one Tao master explained to me that the goal, the highest thing you can achieve as a man, is to become an old woman. So there is some truth in that, of course. But then the question remains: what does it mean to be male before you turn into an old woman? And I think this is something they have in common. And there's no obvious question anymore, especially nowadays, where there's a professional army. Soldiers don't have the status yet they used to have, at least in our part of the world, 100 years ago. Fighting is not highly recommended or rewarded. So these are important questions, I would say.
And the other part of your writing career is actually writing for the newspapers, writing some texts, some essays about different subjects. And I read that subjects are really strange. For example, you were in Afghanistan with Dutch troops, and you were in Guantanamo, and you wrote about massage salons or some parlors in Romania.
I became a masseur.
Yeah. It probably needed a lot of research, and about psychiatric clinic in Belgium. But the most terrifying thing I found you wrote about that you actually spent a vacation with the average Dutch family.
That was a very Okay, I'll explain this a bit. In 2006, I always write like small pieces for Dutch and Belgian newspapers. I wanted to do something else, so I decided I'd like to go to places where I usually don't go. And at that time, Afghanistan was a big issue everywhere. Also, the Dutch troops were going there, and there's this thing: you can be embedded with an army as a journalist or an author. Embedded, living with the troops for 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks. So I thought, this is what I'm going to do. And then in 2006, I traveled to Afghanistan. It was my first time in a war zone. And it was really like a life-changing, it's a cliche, but I don't have any other word for it now, a life-changing experience. I thought I stepped into another world. And I kind of liked it. I had one of the happier moments in my life, strangely enough, in Afghanistan with the soldiers. And I thought this idea of being embedded, you can do it everywhere. You can be embedded in a psychiatric, in an asylum for psychiatric patients. You can be embedded with an average Dutch family. I even was embedded once where I wrote a piece that I would like to be a replacement father. Maybe the father is away for a couple of weeks, and I can come in and be the replacement father and the only deal is that I'd like to write about it. And there were about among 40 families who said, okay, who wrote me, you can come to us. So I went to all the families, I picked one, and I stayed there for 2 weeks. But the experience of being on a vacation with an average Dutch family was in a way more complicated than becoming a masseur in Romania, where I had to massage old people. Yeah.
Well, I'm laughing because from my Belgian friend, like 15 years ago, I heard the story. Of course, it's a funny story about Dutch people, of course, because he's from Belgium. And he said that, when we were young and when we go to Italy and the Italians see this sticker, NL for Netherlands, it means no lira. Because they were money-saving people,
There is this cliche, and to a certain degree, it's true that they were quite stingy.
But all cliches are a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a very funny anecdote because we went to Greece with his family, and of course they rented an apartment. And the first night we went out to a supermarket, and the woman was complaining. The mother, there were 2 young sons, complaining about the prices of the vegetables, whereas compared to the Netherlands, it was extremely cheap. And I wrote this down, and then it came in a newspaper, and she was so angry. She said, "Oh, you make me, all the people now will think we are stingy, and I don't want to pay for my vegetables." And she was really angry about this fact. But I just wrote down what she said to her husband and to me while we were doing shopping in a supermarket on this island in Greece. So, yeah, it's funny that I think...
But it's true.
It's true, yeah. Sometimes cliches are true, yes.
Let us know something more about your relationship with the late Dubravka Ugrešić. Because you were actually friends, and I saw there is on YouTube you can find the speech Arnon gave when Dubravka was receiving some big Dutch literary award. Am I right?
Not at a German award.
German award. Sorry.
It was at the Frankfurt Book Fair, I think 2014-13. Dubravka was given an award, and one of the jury members had asked me to give like the speech. Laudating her work, and I felt honored to do that, and that's how I met Dubravka.
It's the first time you met her, and then you became friends.
And we became kind of friends, but Dubravka, of course, she was a very special person, and she was living a life in Amsterdam, really in exile. I spoke about my parents as outsiders in a Dutch society, but she herself was much more an outsider in this society. She didn't speak a word of Dutch. I think she refused to speak it. And she lived in the western part of Amsterdam in a beautiful but small apartment. And she was a bit disconnected from many things going on in society. And when she became ill, as is often the case, she became a more difficult person. And she fought with, we have something in Amsterdam that's thuiszorg. It's called thuiszorg. It means that nurses come to your home and they take care of you. And she fought with them, and then she decided to have to plan for her own death. And she invited a group of people to come to the hospital before she died. The moment
you were among them.
I was among them, and she was very happy. There was champagne and sushi. Really? That's what she wanted, and she looked so much better than the weeks and months before. I thought it's a pity. And it belonged completely to her, because the moment she was how can I put it? She got the injection. Mm-hmm. We had to leave the room, and then afterwards, the nurse or the doctor came to us and said, "The procedure is over." And this word, the procedure, that was so. I thought I will never forget this.
Yeah. You received a lifetime award few years ago,
yes,
at the age of 50.
Yes.
So what do you think they're telling you something with this?
No, again,
is it too early?
It's before me. It was a lifetime award I wanted 2 lifetime awards, by the way.
So
but
this was 2 lives.
This was the first one, quite important, the most important literary award in the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. And not too long ago, a female author who was almost 100 was given the award a couple of years, I think 3 years before that I got it. So I felt in a way relieved that I didn't have to become 100 to receive this award. But I'm not sure if they were telling me that I should write less, or that I was happy, because the most important Dutch authors got the award around my age. So I felt I'm in good company.
You choose New York as a city where you mostly live now.
It was at that time, I think, love. It was because of love that I went there. I fell in love with a woman
Okay.
who was born in the US but was living in the Netherlands. And she told me, I'm going to New York. I'm going to work there as a psychologist. And because I was in love, I said, oh, I will come with you, without knowing where I was going. And that's how I ended up.
Where are you going?
No, and I was completely unprepared. There are some things that are the things you are doing when you are 23 or 24, I guess. Or maybe you do the same thing when you are older. I'm not sure that can happen, of course. I mean, the madness never disappears completely. But I just went to New York and I fell in love with New York, and I didn't want to leave New York.
Mhm.
I thought first I will be there for 1 year, 2 years, and then it became 7 years and 8 years, and yeah. And New York is still very attractive to me. I'm very happy that she forced me, that she seduced me to go there.
When people speak about your work, I very often hear that they compare you with a couple of writers. I mentioned Philip Roth, for example, but also Michel Houellebecq, which is, I think, interesting. But you mentioned in some interview that actually Coetzee is your favorite writer. Can you tell us something about this?
Yeah, I think among the among the living authors, the South African novelist Coetzee, who won a Nobel Prize in 2003, he's to me the most important author.
Why?
I feel a kind of closeness to his work. I feel this. It seems to be distant. It seems to be cold, and also to his characters. There's like a loneliness which is not completely, cannot be, is more than that. That I find very attractive and I find very compelling in the way his style. It's very very dry in a way, and but there's a sense of humor, even though it's dry. I feel very close to his. He's one of the few authors where I've read really all his books.
Can you mention some other authors you also feel connected?
Well, I met Michel Houellebecq. He's not a very nice person, but that's not important. You don't have to be a nice person to be a good novelist, and there's some of his novels that are really important to me, and I feel closer to him than to, let's say, Philip Roth. Philip Roth is to me very American, and even though I live in New York, I became European in New York, I would say. So I feel closer to many European authors than to Philip Roth. Yeah.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, in this case, maybe I will suggest now that you can read something from the novel Asylum Seeker.
Yeah. So I'm going to read in Dutch, and then you will see the translation.
We hope so. We hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, we hope so. We hope so. Oké. Thuis zat zijn vrouw voor de televisie. Ze keken bijna nooit. 1 second, oké. Ja. Thuis zat zijn vrouw voor de televisie. Ze keken bijna nooit televisie, want ze had een oud model, zwart-wit nog, nauwelijks de moeite van het kijken waard. Ze keek ook niet echt. Ze had een schoolschrift op haar schoot waarin ze aan het schrijven was. Hij gaf haar een kus op haar voorhoofd. Was je bang, vroeg hij. Een beetje. Het maakte zoveel lawaai, dat alarm, en jij? Hij deed zijn schoenen uit, hij negeerde de vraag. Ze neemt het zekere voor het onzekere, zei ze. Hij lachte, een bittere lach. Het onzekere, zei hij. Welk onzekere? Toen zag hij in een hoek van de kamer een berg truien, over hem de broeken. Wat is dat? Oh, zei ze, dat heb ik vanmiddag ingezameld. Ingezameld? Hij gaaide in de stapel alsof hij een vrouw op de markt was die wanhopig naar een bepaalde maat zocht. Ik ben vanmiddag begonnen met inzamelen. Het ging erg goed, zoals je ziet. Hij keek naar de stapel, naar zijn vrouw en toen weer naar de stapel. Ja, dat zie ik, ja. Hij ging zitten. Begrijp ik dat we nu niet alleen meer onze eigen kleren weggeven, maar ook andermans kleren gaan inzamelen om die weg te geven? Begrijp ik dat goed? Mag ik concluderen dat jij van ons huis een soort doorgeefluik gaat maken, waar de overbodige goederen van de rijken worden opgeslagen om ze te verdelen onder de minder bedeelden die de goederen goed kunnen gebruiken? Het is een beetje simplistisch gezegd, maar jij maakt altijd alles simpeler. Dus als je het zo wilt stellen, waarom niet? Je overhemd is gescheurd. Iemand heeft aangetrokken in de schuilkelder. Onbelangrijk, wat schrijf je eigenlijk op? Ik schrijf op wat ik heb ingezameld, dat moet ik toch bijhouden? Beck stond op, liep naar het raam en liet de Luxaflex zakken. Je schrijft op wat je hebt ingezameld. Interessant. Buitengewoon interessant. En hoe lang ben je daar al mee bezig? Een uur, iets langer misschien. Een uur. Hij krabde aan een muggenbeeld. Hij herinnerde zich Sosja, die als een rat door de benen van hoeren en klanten was gekropen. Hij rook de geur die in de schuilkelder had gehangen. Een schuilkelder die nu weer dienst deed als bedrijfsruimte en waarschijnlijk voor altijd dienst zou doen als bedrijfsruimte, want in Elat gebeurde nooit iets. Je houdt, zei hij, de boekhouding van het goede bij. Denk je dat jouw goede daden verdwijnen als ze niet in een kasboek terechtkomen? De mensen die kleding aan me hebben gegeven, moeten toch weten dat het op de plek van bestemming terechtkomt. Ik heb een verantwoordelijkheid. Hij keek haar aan. Ze lachte niet, ze spotte niet, ze meende het. Eigenlijk was ze een ernstig mens. Hij was ooit verliefd geworden op een ernstig mens. Hij die de ernst van alle kanten had bekeken, uit elkaar had gehaald en vrienden en kennissen had gedemonstreerd dat ook die ernst niets dan een product van het zelfbedrog was. Een tamelijk schandelijk product bovendien. Het zelfbedrog had al heel wat betere zaken op de markt gebracht. Zoals sommige mensen van beurs tot beurs gingen om bepaalde huishoudelijke apparatuur aan geïnteresseerden te demonstreren. Wonden, sponsen, multiraspen, messen die nooit bot werden. Zo kon hij de beurzen langs om te demonstreren hoe je jezelf en je medemens in minder dan 24 uur volledig kon ontmaskeren. Maak de bom die mensheid onschadelijk. Dat was hoe Beck zichzelf en zijn service kon aanprijzen. Ik zeg dit heel rustig, zei hij. Ik zeg dit zonder agressie en ik bedoel het niet persoonlijk. Eerst hadden we mismaakt over de vloer. Hij heeft hier zelfs geslapen. Nu ligt de helft van de woonkamer vol met oude kleren. In de slaapkamer ligt de rest. Beck ging naar de slaapkamer en slaakte een kreet die leek op de kreten van het Roemeense hoertje in de schuilkelder. Nee, riep hij. Nee, nee en nog eens nee. Hij kwam uit de slaapkamer en trok de Luxaflex omhoog. Hij moest de straat zien. Hij moest ervan vergewissen dat de wereld nog bestond en doorging. Dat er nog normale mensen waren die converseerden, roddelden, neukten, de krant lazen, geen mismaakte in huis haalden, geen oude kleren van anderen inzamelden. Misschien zou je ze blind kunnen noemen, dat wist Beck niet zeker, maar aangenaam blind, lekker blind, menselijk blind. Goed, zei hij na een paar seconden. We krijgen vlooien, we krijgen luizen, we krijgen motten, we krijgen waarschijnlijk wormen, we worden ziek. En nu vraag ik je, van mens tot mens zal ik maar zeggen. Vergeet even wat we hebben of gehad hebben, onze ruzies, onze meningsverschillen. Vergeet het allemaal even en concentreer je op mijn vraag. Wie wordt hier beter van? Voor wie is dit nuttig? Denk jij dat wat jij doet nuttig is? Nee, zei Beck. Totaal onnuttig. Nutteloos. Nuttelozer kan niet, maar ik maak me geen illusies. Ik hou geen kasboek bij van mijn goede daden. Ik heb niets om me op voor te laten staan. Ik denk dat een paar mensen hier beter van worden. Jij? Ik ook, ja, waarschijnlijk, zo eerlijk wil ik best zijn. Ik denk echt niet al mijn beweegredenen precies te kennen. Hij liep naar de slaapkamer, kwam terug met een stapel oude kleren en gooide die voor haar voeten. Dit is geen inzameling, riep hij. Dit zijn de restanten van een kamp. Doe niet zo dramatisch. Ze sloot haar schrift. Ik ben dramatisch. Wat zit je dwars? Moet ik een opslagruimte zoeken? Ik heb kleren ingezameld, nou en? Geld heb ik ook ingezameld. Ik zamel al heel lang in. Stoort het je? En zelfs als het een imaginaire bezigheid is, zelfs dan, nutteloos, wat maakt het jou uit? Het nutteloze is jouw terrein. Bovendien is het niet waar dat je geen illusies hebt. Je hebt je onlangs nog een ontmaskeraar genoemd. Je denkt, je hebt je daarvoor wel 100 keer een ontmaskeraar genoemd. Je denkt, nee, je gelooft dat dat nuttig is, toch? Waarom zou je het anders doen? Waarom zou je je kwellen als je denkt dat die kwelling niet nuttig is? Thank you.
Thank you. Da li neko sad ima neko pitanje? Nadam se da ste poneli knjige da vam Arnon potpiše, izgleda da se još uvijek ne prodaju. Ako ima, nek dođe na potpisivanje, Arnon je tu još neko vreme. Evo imamo pitanje, izvolite.
Yes, can you hear me? Okay. So you mentioned you spent some time in Afghanistan embedded with the troops. So you mentioned that was one of your happiest periods of your life. Would you care to elaborate about one particular thing?
Yeah, that's
one particular thing that made you happy while being in a war-torn country that's complete mess and that else that comes with it. Thank you.
Yeah. By the way, I was also embedded later in Iraq with US troops, and I was embedded with German troops later. So I came back. But the first time was 2006, and we were in a place called Kandahar Airfield. It was summer, even hotter than it is today, maybe as hot as yesterday. And the first night they told us that the Taliban, the leftovers of the Taliban, sometimes attacked the camp with rockets. And if I would hear the alarm, I had to run to a safe place. There were some safe places designated in the camp. And they also told me that the speed of the rocket was faster than the sound. So the moment you could hear it, you were safe because it was already gone. So the first night, about 40 degrees Celsius in the evening, there was the alarm. And because of to protect the camp, it was completely dark, because otherwise the enemy could see us better. So I had no idea where to go to, really no idea. And I thought, I just remain in my tent and I hope for the best. And then I could hear the rockets. So every time I could hear them, I said, I'm safe. But after 2 minutes, and often such an attack lasted for like a couple of minutes. After 2 minutes, the press officer came into my tent, very, very angry. He said, why are you here? Now I have to lay down on you to protect you because we don't want to send you in a body back to the Netherlands. That's very dangerous for our mission. So this huge man, I think he was like at least 2 feet taller than I am. He lay down on me, and I was hearing the rockets. And this was one of the happiest moments in my life. I came back after 10 days, and I remember we have the Schiphol airport, but all the soldiers going back to the Netherlands, they go to Eindhoven. And my girlfriend at that time picked me up, and she said, you're different. You look like you are invincible. And this was indeed how I felt after this experience. I came back invincible. I've been back to many, I never had the same experience as I had that first time. It was in a way, as I describe it now, I really felt an extreme, and also the tension and everything. There was something that attracted me to this mess. And interestingly enough, if I spoke to many soldiers, some of them told me that they felt that war was addictive. And some of the really war correspondents had the same feeling. And there's a very, very good book by Chris Hedges about the Balkan War. He was there as a war correspondent with the title, War is a Force That Gives You Meaning.
Ima li još neko pitanje? Ništa, u tom slučaju zahvalit ću vam se na prisustvu. Hvala Arnonu, hvala vam i program se nastavlja. Thank you.